Welcome to Government Contracting Weekly, sponsored by AOC Key Solutions Incorporated. Government Contracting Weekly is the only television program devoted exclusively to the competitive and dynamic world of government contracting. A world where coming in second place is not an option, but where principle-centered winning is the only approach.
Good morning, and welcome to Government Contracting Weekly. I'm Jim McCarthy from Key Solutions, filling in this week for Hillary Fordrich. I'm particularly delighted to have you with us today as we present the first installment of an extensive conversation I was privileged to have with Joe Jordan, the Administrator of the Office of Federal Procurement Policy for the OMB and the White House. Joe, who was appointed by President Obama and confirmed by the U.S. Senate, has the ultimate authority and oversight for more than $1/2 $1 trillion in government contracts. Needless to say, this is an enormous responsibility that Joe has taken on, and arguably during the most difficult of historical circumstances. But as you're about to see, the passion and the energy that Joe brings to his position is nothing short of inspiring. Let's meet Joe Jordan. Good morning. I'm Jim McCarthy from Government Contracting Weekly, and I'm here today with one of our most prestigious guests that we've had on our show. It is an absolute pleasure for us to have you here today. Joe Jordan from the Office of Federal Procurement Policy, the head of the Office of Federal Procurement Policy.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I think our audience would like to know a little bit about you, Joe. So can you kind of rewind for us? Tell us, how did you get to where you are today and all that?
Yeah, absolutely. I spent most of my career in the private sector, actually, most recently before joining the Obama administration as a management consultant working on supply chain and purchasing issues for a whole host of various clients, private sector, state governments, and various organizations. And I did a project for the state of Maine back in the summer of '08, trying to help them use private sector best practices to capture efficiencies, reduce their spend as they were feeling the oncoming brunt of the recession. And the person who the governor of Maine had pulled in to lead a council of economic and business leaders in the state was Karen Mills. So had a great experience there. We were able to save the state a lot of money through a lot of smarter purchasing techniques, among other strategies, and went on to do other things. And then President Obama was elected. He asked Karen to run the SBA, and she called me up and said, Joe, I've got a great opportunity for you. The government contracting programs in the small business arena could really use some help. How about you pick up your family, move to DC, work even harder than you do now, travel just as much as you do now, and we'll give you a significant pay cut. And I said, that sounds fantastic.
What a deal, what a deal.
But I really have absolutely loved working in procurement, and specifically loved when I was at SBA interacting with all the great, innovative, entrepreneurial small businesses out there that we have in our government supply chain. And then when my predecessor, Dan Gordon, went to GW and had a great opportunity outside the administration.
And we've had Dan on the show before.
Yeah, he's fantastic. And the White House called and said, would I have any interest in moving from the small business procurement world to running OFPP? And of course, I jumped at the opportunity.
You accepted the call from the White House, I'm sure.
I did, post haste. And I was fortunate enough to make it through the confirmation process and all of that. And now I've been here, been at OMB about 20 months and been confirmed as administrator for a little over a year. And we've done some great things, but what's so exciting is all the opportunity to really further increase the buying smarter techniques, building the right supplier relationships, etc.
The confirmation process, was that a pleasant thing to go through? I mean, did you expect it? Was it easy, hard? How did that work for?
Pleasant probably isn't the top adjective I would use.
That word, huh?
No, but it was a very fair and rigorous evaluation of whether or not I was qualified to do the job. I'm truly honored and humbled that the president asked me to do this and that the Senate deemed me worthy to do it. And at the end of the day, every day that I'm in this job, I'm thankful for the opportunity to do it. And my guiding principle is, what can I do to help drive additional value to the American people? Because that's really what this is all about.
That's what it's all about. Yes, sir. Well, our audience is obviously comprised of government contractors, and so the audience is all interested in what's going on in the business, and there's probably not one better spokesperson for the procurement and acquisition process than you right here. So it can't be an easy job. I mean, there's intractable issues, I'm sure, very difficult issues. But what are some of the challenges that you face in your position as the top dog, if you will, as the administrator? I mean, you're it all comes like the focal point, right? So talk to me about that. What are the challenges?
Sure, Jim.
Yeah.
You know, there's no doubt that there are a host of really interesting challenges that we can work on. I think I'm very fortunate to be building on a solid foundation that the administration had built in terms of improving some of the procurement policies and structures over the first few years of the administration and really throughout the first term. But I'm a big believer in continuous improvement. I think that we're only going to be able to achieve that improvement if we're driving collaboration between the agencies and the private sector and our great vendor community. So when you talk about the government contractors who may be watching or who I deal with all the time, it's critically important that we have free-flowing dialogue between all of the stakeholders. So, you know, as I come up with you know, policy decisions or we're driving new rules or structures or frameworks for the system, that has to be done in a way that absolutely works for the taxpayer and the agencies, but also works for our supply chain and all our great contractors who provide these goods and services that we need to run our agencies and deliver on the mission to the American people.
Yes, sir. Well, you know, it occurs to me that in looking at your career and just studying some of the things that you've done, you've written and spoken very well and often on the subject of, shall we say, acquisition reform. Now, acquisition reform sort of implies reform means that something's broken. Is there anything broken, or if so, what's broken and what are you trying to fix?
Well, again, I look at it more as how can we strive for that continuous improvement model. So that's really the mindset that I have. And specifically the things that I'm focused on are how can we buy smarter, using data and analytics in an increased way to make our decision making, both in terms of the processes and policies that govern our contracting system, as well as the individual buying decisions. And that goes to things like strategic sourcing and the ways that we can you know, buy as what we are, the largest procurer of goods and services in the world, not as what we've done for far too long, which is purchase if we're a few hundred mid-sized businesses. It means, you know, increasing our utilization of small businesses so we can access the innovation, entrepreneurial spirit, and ingenuity that these folks out there can provide to the agencies, really cast a wider net and tap into all corners of the potential contractor community. It means looking at things like past performance and integrity information to make sure we're only doing business with responsible parties. And then lastly, one of our big priorities and ways that we want to engage with all the various stakeholders is developing our acquisition workforce. That's a place where we do have a very acute challenge. We've got a whole bunch of folks who are nearing retirement. We've got a bunch of folks who are newer to the 1102, the contracting officer workforce. And then we've only got about a third of our contracting officers who have between 4 and 20 years of experience. So I can't make a contracting officer who has 10 years of experience, but we can think about what are the mission critical skills and abilities we need to instill in those newer contracting officers so that they can deliver on their agency's mission.
Well, there's no doubt about it. You're in the driver's seat for a lot of things that are going on in federal procurement policy, and so again, we are glad to have you here today. In today's challenging economic environment, every dollar spent is under intense scrutiny, and that includes the sometimes controversial subject of contractors' executive compensation. As we return to my conversation with Joe Jordan, I asked him for his own candid assessment of this issue. Good morning. I'm here again with Joe Jordan, the administrator from OFPP. Joe, welcome once more. The question that I think I'd like to get into now is something that is a little sensitive for the government contracting community, and it's the subject of executive compensation. Some think that contractors, especially senior contractors, are overpaid. Is that the view of government in general, and do you think that government should be seeking the best and the brightest and therefore pay for what they're getting? What's your thoughts on that?
Jim, we absolutely want to get the best and the brightest in our government contracting supply chain, and I understand that there are various ranges of compensation necessary to do that. What we're doing with our efforts around executive compensation is in no way telling contractors what they can pay their employees. Contractors can pay their employees whatever they need to, whatever they want. What we're saying is on cost plus or cost reimbursement contracts, where just like the name connotes, the government is reimbursing the contractor for all the expenses that they accrue, the executive compensation, the overhead, the pay that really drives administrative expenses more than the value onto the contract, we want to cap those. There's been a cap since the mid-90s. It started at $250,000, but due to the statutorily mandated formula that drives the annual increase there, it's now soon going to go up over $950,000. So that was not the spirit, that was not the intent of that cap. And so what we're saying is we need to make that a more reasonable level. We're open to dialogue on what exactly that reasonable level is. We just really want to work with Congress to act. So we've proposed $400,000 the president's salary.
You want the best and brightest. You're
Absolutely.
not telling industry what they can or can't pay or should or should not pay. You're just saying what the taxpayers are going to bear.
That's
What's
right.
fair for them.
It's exactly right.
Okay.
On fixed price contracts, you're going to have a robust competition, and there are all sorts of factors that contractors are using to come up with their prices and that agencies are using to negotiate, and executive compensation is not something that the cap would apply to there. But in cost reimbursement contracts, exactly. You pay your employees what you need to, but the taxpayer will only reimburse you up to a certain level.
Okay, well, I understand that. Okay, well, the next topic is really something that our contracting community is also interested in, and it relates to past performance. Now, we all know that past performance is an important element in proposal evaluation and selection. But past performance is also kind of different because it's possible that the company has the past performance that it cites, obviously it does, but that the people that are bid on the job, maybe they didn't have anything to do with that particular past performance. And so in a sense, I'm not saying it's a mirage, but there is a little disconnect. So what's the government's view on past performance, and does it really represent an ability to judge future performance? What's your thoughts?
Jim, I do think that past performance information is important for us to utilize as one of several factors that would be indicative of potential future performance. However, you are absolutely right that we need a total rethink of how we do past performance evaluations in the government. Now, as a first step, we need to actually do the past performance evaluations that are required now, and so I issued a memo directing all agencies over the next 2 years to get to 100% compliance with those reports, getting them into the system so the contracting officers can use them to make evaluations in upcoming selections and awards. But almost more importantly is not just the quantity, but the quality and the content of those reports, and that's where I want to engage in a robust dialogue with agencies and industries to figure out how we can do this better.
How to do it better.
The example I use is, my wife and I recently went away to a bed and breakfast in Virginia, and when I was thinking about where we were going to go, I had better information on TripAdvisor and Yelp and these types of websites for a $500 hotel decision than major departments have for a $50 million IT services contract. So we've got to get past the point of, well, wait a minute, I as the contractor feel I should get a 5, you gave me a 3 in this category, let's go back and forth, I'm going to protest, I'm going to appeal. We need to move beyond that to the agency says this is how we feel you did. You have an opportunity to say here's why exactly, and it's all out there, and the next person can read both of those things and make their own evaluation, just like we do in every private sector context. So let's not get so deep into government contracting is somehow unique in this area. Instead, use the best transparent private sector examples and make that the model for our public sector past performance.
So it's clear you're heavy into the whole thinking about the past performance and its place in the selection process.
Absolutely.
Okay. As I noted at the beginning of this program, Joe Jordan took over the reins of the Office of Federal Procurement Policy at what is clearly one of the most unusual and difficult periods in its history. There were a number of issues that I was very keen to ask Joe about, but certainly towards the top of the list was his own opinion of sequestration and whether our current environment will pass, or as some people predict, that we are experiencing actually a new normal. Let's take a look. Okay, Joe, so there's a question that's on everybody's mind in the contracting community. I'll use it, the S word, sequestration. Now, arguably, this has been one of the most difficult times for government contractors in recent history, for sure. And you're at the helm, you're at the pinnacle, you're dealing with a whole myriad of issues, some of which you've already discussed. So here's the question for us, is sequestration, have we seen it now? Is it over? Or is there another shoe to drop? Is there more to come? What do you think?
Jim, I wish I had a definitive answer. certainly I hope and still believe that sequestration will be replaced by balanced deficit reduction. There's no doubt that we're in more constrained fiscal budgetary times than in the past. However, sequestration is bad policy. It's a bad way to do this. It's a blunt instrument that cuts every account equally, that, you know, the whole point of sequestration is to make it so bad that it would never come to fruition. And unfortunately, that didn't happen.
It didn't happen, yeah.
So, you know, what I'm focused on doing is making sure that during sequestration, agencies have their eye on the ball and are focused on mission critical needs and engaging with the vendor community to make sure that they get their necessary contracts to support those mission critical needs. Then going forward, that we're working with everyone to understand that while hopefully sequestration goes away and is replaced, we're buying smarter, engaging in a thoughtful way, because a lot of times contractors can come to an agency and have a better way to build a mousetrap.
Exactly.
And now there is, I think, throughout the community, a real desire to work together and figure out how we can get the things agencies need in a way that's the most cost-effective, drives the best value taxpayer.
Do you sense that we have turned the corner on sequestration, in the sense that most of its impacts have already been felt, at least for the first year or so, or is there more to come? And is there a new normal about the way government's conducting procurement and acquisitions?
You know, unfortunately, many effects of sequestration are going to continue to be felt until it's replaced. There are a whole host of things around Head Start and education funding and scientific research that, yes, we felt some of, but you're going to feel more and more and more. You know, you've heard a number of statements come out of the Pentagon about the devastating impacts that will be driven to our military and our Defense Department if sequestration is not turned off, if sequestration is not replaced. So we absolutely need to turn this off, and we also need to work together at the same time to make sure that while we're under the cloud of sequestration, we're ensuring that agencies deliver on their mission to the maximum extent they can.
Yeah, but sequestration is something that keeps you up at night, I bet, right? It has, and it will continue for a while anyway.
Absolutely, because at the end of the day, there is no way to manage, you know, our way out of sequestration.
Okay, so let's talk about it. It's a sort of a flow from sequestration, but it goes to the whole procurement activity and RFP release. We would observe, or some have observed, that for, you know, way up until the time sequestration actually took effect, there was sort of a chilling effect. The government wasn't releasing RFPs, industry was in sort of a gridlock. So the question now is it a new normal, and is the RFP pipeline about to turn the spigot and they'll start running again? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, you know, Jim, I think your use of the chilling effect is fair, because if there's, you know, one thing above all that is harmful to a healthy acquisition ecosystem, it's uncertainty. You know, contracting officers do not want to and cannot obligate funds that they don't know they're going to have. And so, you know, whether it's a continuing resolution that goes too long and has an uncertain conclusion, certainly with sequestration, it drives this uncertainty that, combined with the reduced budgets and the increased fiscal pressures, you know, makes contracting officers wary of doing all the great acquisition planning that leads up to a really fruitful award and
a good proposal and a good contract selection.
So I am very appreciative of the good work contracting officers and agencies are doing in acquisition planning, are doing on this front. And I do know that we're, you know, as we're in fourth quarter, you know, traditionally the largest spending and contracting time of the year, that it's extra critical that we all work together to make sure we're optimizing the acquisition system.
Well, it would be our judgment, or at least our thoughts, that more RFPs are beginning to come out. Now, is that a short-term trend? Is that a mirage? Will you think it'll continue? Is it going to dip back down again as we get closer to concurrent resolutions, or you know, continuing resolutions, excuse me? Is there any, what's your thinking on that?
You know, I do think that you're going to see disproportionately higher numbers of RFPs issued in the fourth quarter because the acquisition planning process was a bit compressed. You're going to have high volume here in the fourth quarter of the fiscal year. And then as we reach the end of the fiscal year and into fiscal 14, you will see a slowdown in the issuance of RFPs, as in if agencies remain uncertain about what their fiscal 14
more
budgets
than
look like.
traditionally would be expected in the first quarter of a fiscal year. Is that fair?
If Congress doesn't act to pass agency budgets that make sense and allow them to deliver on their missions, then unfortunately that would probably be a byproduct.
Okay. Well, there's hardly a more intractable issue than sequestration, and so congratulations on the way you've handled it, and we look forward to seeing a quick resolution. Thank you. Okay. When you get right down to it, nothing may have a greater impact on the entire government contracting community than the dramatic changes that are taking place in the acquisition workforce. The aging of America is one of the main factors driving a substantial brain drain. And while most of the new staffers are eager to succeed, there's no question that a lack of experience and institutional memory cuts right to the very heart of the procurement process. Let's get Joe Jordan's take on all of this. Here's another important subject that I would like to get your views on. It's the whole acquisition workforce. So I guess the question I would ask is, what is your vision for an acquisition workforce of the future, and what problems right now exist because the acquisition workforce isn't up to the par that you would like it to be? What do you think about that?
So my vision is an acquisition workforce comprised of smart, hardworking, innovative thinkers who can help agencies get the goods and services they need at the best possible value. Now, what are some of the challenges that we face now? As you correctly noted, we do have an aging workforce. About a third of our contracting officers are approaching retirement age. From 2000 to 2008, you saw contract spending grow at about 12% per year, but you saw the acquisition workforce remain flat or even trend down a little bit.
Right.
When you have that delta, it causes a lot of problems in terms of overwork and a disincentive for folks to stay in the acquisition workforce. At the beginning of this administration, we reversed that trend and both have brought contract spending more in check as well as increased the number of our contracting officers. What that means, though, is that where we've got that third that are bumping up against retirement, we've got about a third with 4 or fewer years of experience. So we need to make sure that, first of all, we're widening our aperture on who we recruit to be in the acquisition workforce. I don't necessarily need someone who walks in on day one as a FAR expert or a government contracting person. I just want a smart person who wants to serve, who looks at the acquisition world and says, there's $500 billion the government spends every year through government contracting. I want to help do that better. Right. And then we'll train them up. And that goes to what are the training classes and courses that we're giving these folks, and how do we deliver them? Yep. It can't just be pull them off the line for 2 weeks and send them to a classroom. We've got to think about online education, distance learning, these efficient and effective ways to deliver the training that we know is necessary.
So let me ask you this question. We deal with RFPs in our business all the day, and so does our audience, as a matter of fact. It would seem that sometimes RFPs are fraught with disconnects between, let's say, Section L and Section M in terms of the instructions versus the evaluation factors. Is that a function maybe of the workforce is overburdened, overworked? There's not enough of them and all that. What's your thought on that?
I think there are 3 things. One, you touched on that there is some burden issue, no doubt, and we're trying to do everything we can to free up the time they spend on commodity purchases to be focused on mission critical acquisitions. And that goes to number 2, which is the creation of the Strategic Sourcing Leadership Council, where we can standardize a lot of those terms and conditions, which not only help the government and help this process you're talking about, but it takes administrative costs out of the system overall. So, from the vendor perspective, they don't have myriad bid and proposals that have different sections and different language in them, that they're standardized, and they can share in some of those savings and they'll pass them on to the government.
Here's a question and a thought, and it's not meant to be any kind of a surprise. I just was wondering myself, but sometimes RFPs are so complex that it almost takes a divining rod to be able to discern exactly what the government's looking for. What would be wrong if the government just said, here are the 5 problems we want you to address, give us your answers, and then go from there? Why does it have to be so circuitous and vague and stuff?
I'd love to move more towards the collaborative approach that you outline and the more innovative problem-solving approach. We work a lot on challenges and prize authority and these types of ways to think outside the box. I know that's a trite phrase, but think innovatively on ways to engage with the vendor community. One specific thing we're doing is we created this portal called RFP-EZ, you know, kind of like the tax 1040 EZ, where for now, for acquisitions below the simplified acquisition threshold, the $150,000 level, there's a standardized statement of work composer. There's an online portal where contracting officers and the vendors can communicate.
And do you think this will eventually spread to the bigger, more mission-critical things as well? Or
I do. Over time, you've seen about 30% savings in what the agencies are paying for contracts going through RFP-EZ versus the exact same contracts put through Fed Biz Ops. So I think that it's proving its value, and as we continue to kind of drive the proof of concept with the help of these great presidential innovation fellows we've brought in to work on this, you will see an expansion of this type of thinking. You know, maybe not this exact portal, but this type of thinking, which will be really helpful. And Jim, there's one other thing that I just have to drive home when we're talking about the workforce. I hear too often, contracting officers or certainly contractors say that contracting officers say, if it's not expressly, written out in the FAR that I can do this and this is how to do this, I probably shouldn't do this. It's the exact opposite of how I think. I want contracting officers to embrace innovative and entrepreneurial thinking, to work with vendors in a collaborative, smart way. And I only need to point to part 1 of the FAR. There are 53 parts. You don't have to get past part 1, where it says, if it's not expressly prohibited in this book and complies with sound business judgment, you can do it. And that, when you talk about acquisition workforce, that's the silver bullet I'm going to keep pushing.
Okay. So if that were your legacy, would that be something that you'd like to accomplish before you leave office?
I would be incredibly proud. And it's a place that I think I can be helpful, because their contract officers are going to need some air cover. If you're going to take some risks that should have outsized positive rewards, sometimes those contracts will go sideways. And I need to stand up and say, look, this was a smart thing to do. We've learned from it. We're going to take the learnings and apply them to future procurements. But it's okay that, this went sideways, because all of the information we had at the time led us to believe that this could deliver outsized rewards.
It sounds like you have a real vision for change here, and we certainly, as industry, look forward to seeing some of the results of that in the future. So, thank you. To say the least, Joe Jordan is about the busiest man that I know, which makes me incredibly grateful that he was so generous with his time. I also know that Joe was genuinely eager to share his vision and his message with our audience. And by that I mean those of you from the government contracting community, as well as those of you who are our clients, which cuts across all of the government agencies. I hope that you've gained some important insights from my Joe Jordan conversation, and I hope you will join us next week for the second part of the interview. In part 2, Joe and I discuss a number of critical issues, including LPTA and best value, the unique issues facing small businesses and the challenge they often face in gaining access to potential government customers, the competition between incumbents and challengers, and lastly, Joe's take on the term inherently governmental activity. As always, thank you for making Government Contracting Weekly a part of your learning experience. On behalf of all my colleagues at Key Solutions, I'm Jim McCarthy, and we'll see you next week.
You've been watching Government Contracting Weekly, sponsored each week by AOC Key Solutions Incorporated. Government Contracting Weekly is the only television program devoted exclusively to the competitive and dynamic world of government contracting. For additional information, comments, questions, or suggestions, please write us at governmentcontractingweekly.com.